Hello and welcome to Harness the Power of Artificial Intelligence to Catch Your Suspect Quicker webinar, sponsored by Veritone and Face Inc. Today,
Hi.
I'd like to welcome Renee from Blue Line Publishing. Go ahead, Renee.
Hi, everyone. I'm the editor of Blue Line Magazine. Thanks for everybody who's on the call with us today. We are excited to be sharing some very interesting information with you. Today's event is way more than just a webinar. So during this 1-hour workshop, you're going to learn how to harness the power of artificial intelligence. If you have any questions during this webinar, you can type them into the questions box, which you will find on the panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll get to questions at the end, and don't worry if we run out of time, somebody will have your contact information and we'll get back to you afterwards. Without further ado, let me bring back our host, Daniel Wong, and Daniel, take it away.
Thank you, Renee. Welcome everybody again. Today we have some great panelists here with me today. I'd like to welcome, first of all, in here in Costa Mesa, we have Ben Haas, Solutions Architect for Veritone. Ben has been a Solutions Architect here at Veritone for a little bit over a year and has been in the Solutions Architect software business for over 14 years. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Daniel.
And tuning way far away from Toronto, we have Adam Tanner, CEO of Face Inc. Adam is one of the recognized, established business and industry leaders out in the Canadian area with over 20 years of experience. Adam has been working with all sorts of cybersecurity companies and what have you. And so he started his company called Facially Activated Content Engine Inc., also known as FACE. And so, and Adam works again with channel partners like Veritone in this law and legal and law enforcement space. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yep. And we have today a special guest. Really, my honor to actually have him here is Deputy Chief Julian Harvey from the Anaheim PD. Deputy Chief Harvey is now entering his 27th year with the Anaheim Police Department. He began his career with Anaheim PD in 1992. As a police officer, he's been assigned as a patrol officer, a field training officer, a member of the SWAT team, a gang enforcement investigator, a helicopter pilot, and a flight instructor. In 2001, Deputy Chief Harvey was promoted to sergeant, and as sergeant, he worked as a patrol sergeant of internal affairs and also supervised the gang enforcement unit. In 2005, Harvey was promoted to police lieutenant, where he was assigned as a patrol watch commander and bureau commander in the strategic services, air support, the Orange County Family Justice Center, the Vice Narcotics, Criminal Intelligence, Crimes Persons Investigation. And in 2012, Harvey was promoted to captain, where he led operations in the Operations Support Divisions, as well as the Tactical Response Group. And then finally in 2013, he was named Deputy Chief and also served as Acting Chief between October 2017 and October 2017 to July 2018. Julian, thank you very much and welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Daniel. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and first and foremost, I just want to thank you for your service. You have a great resume, and it's really an honor for you to be with us and share with us and the audience here your insights and experience on using AI and to help capture suspects.
Thank you. Again, glad to be here, and I'm glad to pay any support I can or any help I can to others that might be interested in this technology.
Yeah, great. So let's get straight to the matter. I mean, well, actually, before we even do that, before we even talk about AI and what have you, we know, Deputy Chief Harvey, you're part of the Anaheim PD. A lot of the folks here today are from Canada listening in. They know Anaheim as probably the happiest place on earth, home of Disneyland. But before we go more than that, I thought you maybe can share with us a little bit about the city of Anaheim and how big it is and how much responsibility does Anaheim PD have,
Yeah, good question. So Anaheim is a population of 360,000. So it's a middle-sized city. It's the largest city in Orange County, California. It does, however, welcome 25 million visitors a year through its various venues, notably Disneyland, the Anaheim Stadium, the Honda Center. The convention center is the largest on the West Coast. We just finished hosting the BlizzCon convention just this past weekend. So at any given time, that 360,000 balloons to well over 500,000 on any given day. It's about 52 square miles, and it's made up of very diverse neighborhoods, which I'm sure a lot of the listeners can attest to in their communities. We have some struggling neighborhoods comprised of working class families. We have some very wealthy areas as well, and everything in between. So it's a very diverse city. It has one of the largest Southeast Asian and Muslim American communities in the country, second only to Dearborn, Michigan. So as far as demographics, it's about 52% Hispanic. And again, the socioeconomic strata kind of run the entire gamut.
Now, obviously, this is huge, huge community and so forth. How many people are in your police force?
We have 400 sworn officers, a total employees, full-time employees of just over 600. So it's fairly lean to police a city that large, and with that many visitors, with 400 officers, is a continuing challenge.
Oh, I bet. Now, I hear Anaheim PD in the news. I live in Orange County here. It's our, my backyard. And obviously I do hear Anaheim PD in the news, and it's your typical, here are the crimes that happen, what have you. But what catches me when I do hear certain parts of the news about Anaheim PD is the technology you guys are using to help fight crime and solve cold case studies and so forth. Tell me a little bit about your department's philosophy with regards to using some of these latest technologies, and and how did you get going with AI? What sparked that?
Sure. Building off your last question about our number of officers, out of necessity, really, we've been forced to look for ways to reduce the investigative timeline, to leverage the limited resources we have with whatever tools might be out there. So to our credit, and it's not because of me, but it's because of the makeup of our workforce, and we have had a history of taking risks. I'm not saying this is risky technology by any means, but kind of venturing out and trying new things. And that goes back to going way back to using cell phone technology, buying the best and most capable multi-lens cameras that we affix to our helicopters to allow for, again, the leveraging of that incredible platform to not only zoom in on a very small area, but to record what's going on. And this latest venture into artificial intelligence is just one more example of leveraging technology to help our limited human resources get the job done.
Just out of curiosity, why AI? Like, what made you go, wow, AI is kind of something I want to look into?
Right. I actually learned about Veritone probably 2.5 years ago, and what they were doing in the big data field in terms of their ability to process and categorize large amounts of data. And as soon as I heard about what they were doing, I knew there was an application in policing, that we have vast amounts of data. Every police department tuning in today is sitting on a treasure trove of information, whether it be in the form of police reports or photographs or fingerprints. And how can you use that data to bring that investigative timeline down considerably? Because as everyone on the call probably knows, criminals typically don't stop in one jurisdiction. They're very mobile, and the most prolific criminals are very busy, and they're committing crimes all day, sometimes all night, and across multiple jurisdictions. So the ability to use that data across jurisdictions is really the ultimate goal, is to be able to share and tap into that data to catch criminals.
Nice. Well, when we talk about AI, maybe Ben, you can chime in here a little bit and tell us a little bit about, maybe level set people's reality about AI, because when I hear AI, is it Terminator? Is it Skynet, about to rule the world, these robots? And what is AI today? Can you help kind of level set, that expectation with our listeners here?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So today, artificial intelligence is really it's really a way of enabling humans to be able to do their job more efficiently and kind of move them up the chain in terms of the type of work they're doing. So a lot of things today, such as identifying a suspect based off of photographic or video evidence, it's a very manual, laborious process. And so AI is used to be able to take that repeated process that's very time intensive and to make it a lot easier for the human to basically move from being in the loop where they're doing it all manually to moving on the loop where they're actually just supervising the results that AI does in terms of heavy lifting. So in the case of suspect identification, it will narrow down your pool of thousands or millions of arrest record photos of individuals down to just a few, and now they can go ahead and make that final decision and follow up. And so it's really about making the human that much more intelligent and being able to do their job faster and more efficiently.
Oh, great. So, Deputy Chief Harvey, so if you mind sharing with our audience how exactly you're using AI as part of your workflow to identify suspects and catch these criminals. If you want to tell a story on how you started working with Veritone or what you're doing with workflow, that'd be great.
Sure. So we use it in a fairly narrow application currently. We're hoping to expand that, but essentially every police department in the country and in every other country have mugshot photos of suspects whom they have arrested. These are publicly accessible photographs. These are subject to a public release if we were to get a request. And as I stated earlier, many of our prolific offenders have been arrested in the past multiple times. So we come up with wanted flyers. Sometimes a crime occurs and the person responsible is captured on closed circuit television or on video or by some other form of photographic evidence. And we have often a grainy, maybe a side view of the person who broke into this business. And in the old days, you know, absent additional leads on who that person might be, or whether you had a witness or maybe even a biometric fingerprint that was taken, that case would likely go unsolved, as the vast majority of property crime offenses are. They go unsolved. But if you can have a way to skim your mugshot photos quickly, literally in a matter of seconds, as opposed to manually, to see if maybe there is a potential match, that is a huge leap forward. And again, it will bring to closure an investigation that in the past would otherwise have gone unworked, let alone unsolved.
So in this case, you're using one of Veritone's product called Identify, uses facial recognition to help you kind of match facial suspects with people in your known offender database. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's measuring physiological characteristics of individuals, just like a fingerprint. Mm-hmm. These are biometric, very characteristically unique to people. And again, what it is it moves the investigation down the road. And what Identify does is it will provide the investigators a group of potential individuals whom the photograph might match. Mm-hmm. It's not automatic, it's not foolproof, but it's a start. And often maybe you'll be reduced to 25 photographs versus searching your entire database of 300,000 photographs.
Now that's amazing. You mentioned 300,000 in your database. So before Veritone came into your picture in your life, officers or analysts were actually going through, I guess, through a manual labor process, right, to find this?
Well, sometimes, mm-hmm. Only if something would have forced them to go down that path to do a manual search. It is time prohibitive.
Right.
It is virtually impossible to go through one at a time.
Right.
Number one, the human eye is fallible.
Yep.
It is nowhere near as accurate as these search engines are. And again, it would be so time intensive and so labor intensive, you simply wouldn't do it. And that case, if it's a property crime, would go unworked. It would go basically closed, along with thousands of other cases. Right. But in these instances where you're able to tap into hopefully not only our photographs, but eventually every other surrounding agency's mugshot photographs, the likelihood of identifying this person is fairly high because, as I said, many of these criminals are prolific offenders.
Now that you make a great statement there about seeing other neighboring vicinities databases, right? So it sounds like you guys are working with other neighboring law enforcement agencies on sharing databases.
We are, and you know, it is not easy because these require agreements. They require, you know, legal review, significant legal review. So I encourage all of the listeners today that if you have relationships with your neighboring agencies, that this is a great way to leverage that data to move that investigative timeline down considerably. So one note I'll bring forward is for quite a while, we were the only one in the county. We are the only one in the county with this capability. And so one indication of its success is detectives from other agencies reached out to us. They reach out to us still. Hey, we have this photograph of a suspect in one of our cases. Do you mind running it through Veritone? And we do without ever asking. And we've made, to date, I believe we've made about 150 identifications of people, you know, the majority of which are for agencies outside of ours.
Nice.
They reach out. So detectives aren't, you know, they want to find where the shortcuts are. And this is a really good shortcut.
Now, we will show later a product demonstration of this Veritone Identify product and how you're able to identify suspects using AI. Ben's going to show us that and also show us the platform and how you can share that stuff. But obviously, I want to talk a little bit more on the subject of using Identify and AI, and like to talk a little bit about some of the laws that are here in the United States. Obviously, our friends in Canada have different laws than we do, but obviously, at the end of the day, you know, law enforcement just wanted to catch the bad guys, right? And so, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the laws and maybe?
Sure. So let's just walk the group through how we use it, and that might help illuminate what some of the issues might be. So this photograph that I just described, the individual commits a crime and their image is captured digitally. And so there is although temporal, there is a digital biometric piece of evidence that was left behind by the individual. Not unlike a fingerprint, although again, it's temporal. And so we take that evidence, we compare it to our known offender database, and we come up with a list of possible matches. This does not mean that this person committed the crime, that if you believe, oh, that's the person in the image, the detectives still have to do their work. They still have to go out and put the case on them. They have to physically put that person there through other means like cell phone technology or an admission or a third-party witness statement. Various ways you actually have to physically put that person there. So this is not a conviction. This is not even a filed case. This is, again, you're moving a case that otherwise would not have been worked to, you know, 100 yards down the road, where you actually now have a workable group of individuals who might be involved in this case, and now your detective work is far more finite.
Nice.
And so that's how we use it. This is not a conviction. It's not even enough to go get an arrest warrant.
It just
enough to start.
Improves workflow efficiencies. Right. You cut a lot of manual labor hours and so forth.
And so some of the laws here in California that you've probably heard about, in the Bay Area and San Francisco specifically, outright banning the use of facial recognition tools to law enforcement, period. These efforts, I understand why groups like the ACLU are concerned, but again, we are not passively using this technology, capturing people walking down the road and comparing their images to databases that, for example, driver's license databases. We're not doing that. We are comparing a crime scene photograph to a known offender database. So these are two things. A crime has occurred and someone's image was captured, and oh, by the way, I have all these mugshots.
Right. These are people who've already committed a crime, and you get, like you said, they've had a mugshot and been arrested.
I have their mugshot legally.
Right.
It was taken legally through probable cause arrest, and so I have that information. And again, I'm not saying this person did it. It's simply a list of possible suspects for the detectives to go out and work. And I'll give you a quick another example that might illustrate this is we were requested by another agency in another county nearby in Los Angeles County. There was a sex crime occurred, a felony sexual assault, very serious crime. And there was a sketch artist who produced a sketch of a suspect based on the witness and victim information and recollection. They, to their credit, they reached out to Anaheim PD and said, hey, how does your tool work on sketches? And we, again, I don't have seasoned detectives working this stuff. I have actually civilian investigators who use this tool because it is very easy to use. They said, you know what? I don't know. Let's try it. And sure enough, we got a group of potential hits on that, one of whom turned out to be the suspect, whom we had arrested about a year prior for driving under the influence. So that's an example of without that effort, without that hit, who knows whether this case would have gone unsolved.
Right, very nice. Let's turn this discussion over to our more of a Canadian slant. This question is for Adam Tanner. Adam, you've been selling, AI-powered solutions around facial recognition in the Canadian market for a while. What has
Correct.
been the reception like amongst the various law enforcement agencies on the use or the potential use of AI technology in their workflow?
Well, so far, thanks, Daniel, and great speech there, Deputy. So I'm involved right now, or FACE is involved right now with two major police services within Ontario. Can't name them right now because they're going out for an RFP. But some of the issues that they've run into is, what's going to happen if the police services have this type of power. Can they go and do crowd scan and then pick off people, that sort of thing? That's not true. They cannot do that unless it's under extreme measures, such as, maybe a potential active shooter, maybe a bomb threat within a stadium, school, and or airport, that sort of thing. So they're very receptive to this technology, but the public perception is, oh, wait a second, you know what? If we have this technology, what's stopping them to come into a building and arrest people, and the suspects are not the suspects, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of debate on this technology, and it's unregulated right now, but two major police services within Canada are using this type of technology, and it works very well.
Nice. And now, are there any other AI power solution use cases you've seen in the Canadian market that's been getting some traction, given that you've been selling this again in the marketplace?
Yeah, there's within the police community in Canada, most of the police services have a unit within it called ICE, which is Internet Child Exploitation. And they have this task to go through pictures, audio, text, and videos of basically child molestation. Given that, there's police wellness that's involved as well, suspects, moreover, the victims. So this type of software has been demoed, and it can relieve a lot of tension, a lot of heartache with the frontline officers investigating this type of, horrible criminal acts. So there's a lot of traction there.
Cool. Well, thanks, Adam, for sharing. I think what we're now going to do is, in the spirit of time, I want to make sure we let you guys see the identified demonstration from Ben Ha. So let me just hand the baton over to Ben. Ben?
Great. Thanks, Daniel. So without further ado, let's get into the demonstration of our Veritone Identify application. One thing you'll notice is when you first look at the application, it is web-based, so it's easy to be able to securely log in from a standard web browser and access it, and all of this data is stored in a secure GovCloud environment. Now, when you're setting up the Identify application, you'll see on the left-hand side we have a series of cases, and so you have the ability to create new case folders, and by no means is this meant to replace your case management system or RMS. This is really just a simple way to put related evidence that you're investigating for a given crime, and to be able to upload that into a single place, and to be able to give it some basic information so that you can quickly identify what you're working on.
Now, Ben, this product here is, I think you said it was cloud-based, correct? So you can log in from anywhere in your office, at home, what have you, right?
That's correct.
And all the information that's stored, where's that stored, all that?
It's stored within a secure GovCloud environment. So the actual known offender mugshots and metadata related to those arrest records would all be stored as part of that environment.
Great.
Now, once you set up a case folder, what you can do is upload your media. And so this would be your photographic or video evidence that you have that has a good face shot of the individual you're trying to identify. And so it's a simple drag and drop process to find files on your device and to be able to upload that content. Now, once you're done with that process, you can go ahead and review the evidence, and you have two different options here. So you'll see over here that I'm reviewing the video, and I, excuse me, I can trim and process or process this video. So what that allows me to do is process is going to take every frame from this video where a suspect's face is identifiable, and it's going to run that against all the mugshots and in the arrest record data. With trim and process, we have the ability to trim that video down. So let's say that this is a really long video. What I can do is simply drag the left and right bars over to the area where I really have a good front-facing shot of that individual I'd like to identify. And so now I could take a really long clip and trim it down to maybe the 5 or 10 seconds or so where that suspect's face is visible. And so it makes the processing, as you can imagine, a whole lot faster. And so these are some of the techniques you can do. We also have the ability to do manual face identification. So what that allows us to do is actually jump to parts of the video where, again, that suspect's face is visible, and you can actually just drag and draw a box around the face and add it. And so what that's going to do is crop the face right from the video evidence, and it's going to allow you to process based off the image, which again is going to be a lot faster than going through the video. So you might have multiple different angles of that same individual. Maybe there's multiple suspects. So imagine, if you will, that this is footage of a busy street corner. There's a lot of pedestrians and other individuals that you're not trying to do a targeted identification off of. And so this manual face ID feature makes it really easy to pinpoint one face out of a crowd and to be able to identify just that.
Now, Ben, how many pictures do you need ideally to get a good face match? Is one good enough, or do you need multiple?
So one would be good enough, but the more different angles and things you can get of that face, the higher your chances are. So with facial recognition technology, a lot of times both from a training perspective on the mugshots, as well as when you're actually identifying it from the evidence, having a few different angles increases your chances of getting some good matches. Now, one thing you're going to notice here is before I process the evidence, I have the ability to actually choose from different known offender databases. So you may have your local agency's database, but there may also be neighboring agencies that are also participating in the data sharing program of Veritone Identify.
This is what Deputy Chief Harvey was talking about here. And so how do other agencies participate in this? How does that work?
Great question. So all you have to do is sign up for the process. When you start using Veritone Identify, you have the ability to opt into a data sharing program. And so any neighboring agencies that you choose to do the data sharing with, it's a two-way street. So let's say that I'm Anaheim PD and there's a neighboring agency. When you opt into that data sharing process, both agencies can see each other's arrest record data, and now they'll become selectable from this drop-down list. And so now I have the ability to cast a wider net. And as we know, our criminals tend to not stay in one area. And so now you have a greater chance of making that catch.
Great. I can see this just growing once all the neighboring cities and law enforcement agencies agree to work with each other. They can just build a great database.
Absolutely. One other feature I'd like to briefly share with you guys is the ability to process and do some image correction. So a lot of times, as Julian mentioned, you have a lot of CCTV footage where maybe the footage is kind of grainy, or maybe there's other things that can be done to increase maybe the brightness and the contrast of the image. And so we have a variety of image correction tools built into here that don't affect the overall integrity of the image, but allow you to make some simple adjustments. So things like rotating the image counterclockwise or clockwise, being able to flip the image. In the case of a selfie shot, you may need to correct that and look at it the other way. You can also adjust the brightness and contrast of the image, and you can also convert to black and white. So there's a number of different things you can do in addition to just cropping the image down to be able to get some good shots and then process your image accordingly. So really with Identify, we designed this in a way where it's simple to use, and we've also included a lot of these adjustment tools to be able to give you a higher chance of making those potential matches. Once the evidence has been processed, that's where the process tab comes into play. And so when I click into this tab, what I'm going to see is all the evidence has been processed, and now I can actually view my potential matches. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see a list of all the faces that have been detected throughout that video evidence. And on the right side, you're going to see a list of potential matches. In this particular example, there was only one match that was close enough that it would show up, but oftentimes especially when you have thousands or even millions of arrest record photos, it's going to show you maybe top 10, top 20, whatever that may be. So it'll call down a list of potential matches. And so per face that's been detected, you can see that list. We also have the ability to filter this down. And so, for example, I might be looking for a male suspect, so I can go ahead and uncheck female, and now it's going to filter that list of maybe 20 or 100 matches down to maybe just 10. And so you can use all the arrest record metadata that has these distinguishing characteristics about the individual to really filter that result set down even further.
Nice. Now, I know Anaheim PD used this to help, like you said, cull down to a smaller, either to the suspect or a smaller group of suspects. Deputy Chief Harvey, when you guys went there and culled down, of those that you've kind of identified, how many actually, I mean, I take it they're still in process, right? But I was just curious how many were actually led to convictions or what have you? Just curious.
Unfortunately, I don't have real accurate numbers on that. For example, the other outside agencies that request our assistance, we will provide, here's 12 photographs that could be possible matches. We don't always hear back as far as the outcome of the case. So,
but the good news is you've identified at least 12 people than not having any at all, right? So
right, and often on the other side of the equation is this will also allow you to eliminate a potential suspect.
Good point. Yeah.
If someone might have been wrongfully pointed out as being involved, this tool can work in the opposite direction as well.
Good point. Now, ease of use. You guys used this for a while. How hard was it for some of your folks to learn and take on this product?
Yeah, like I said, we had a couple of professional civilian staff who took to it readily, and it's very intuitive. We actually were able to work with the engineers here at Veritone and actually make a few
future enhancements.
Enhancements, exactly. A little more ease of identifying potential suspects and eliminating others, because once you use this tool for a period of time, again, its logarithms are looking at dimensions on facial features. So sometimes you'll get someone of a different gender, and you can immediately eliminate a lot of these people. And so once you use it for literally a matter of days or weeks, you get quite adept at it. And like I said, we have two civilian investigators who've shown tremendous prowess.
Nice. Ben, is there anything else you want to show us here on the app?
There is. So once you have a potential suspect, you also have the ability to view the details of that. And so now with this view, we can actually get a side-by-side comparison of the face that was detected from that video evidence compared to the mugshot photos. If there were any additional photos, maybe side shots of the person, tattoos, anything else that might be relevant, that would also be pulled from that arrest record data. And you can see on the right-hand side, we also have a lot of that demographic and booking data. And so it just, again, puts it all in one convenient place so that they have all the tools they need to be able to continue their investigation. So now as an investigator, I can say, yep, this looks like this might be a suspect. Let's go ahead and mark them as a suspect and continue the process. So once I mark the individual as a suspect, all suspects for a given case will show up here in the suspects tab. And we have the ability to now share this out. So we can share the suspect details with maybe other investigators collaborating on this case. We also have the ability to share this entire case if there's multiple suspects within that overall case that's being investigated. And then there's other features here in terms of confirming a match. So once you have an eyewitness confirm that, hey, this is actually the right person, you have the ability to confirm that. And now that just gives you a visual indicator that a match was confirmed. And this notes section will act as an audit trail for essentially all the status updates that have happened, suspect being identified, match being confirmed, and you can even create your own notes. So again, just collaborative features to make it really easy to do all your investigative related work in a single place and then continue the process.
Very nice. Now, Ben, there's probably competing products out there. I mean, just out of curiosity, how does this differ from what's out there in the marketplace?
Great question. So a lot of the facial recognition technologies that are out there have a lot of similarities. What we found that works really well with our Identify application is the fact that we can process video evidence natively. So we found that a lot of these competing applications, they're based off of images because a lot of these facial recognition engines accept images natively. What we've done with Veritone is, as part of the larger AI we're offering, we have the ability to process videos at a very rapid pace. And so we can go at a frame-by-frame level, grab all the images and pull that right from the video content. And so again, it's just one less step for the investigator or the civilian officer that's kind of working through the process. They don't have to go to a separate application to to crop the image out from a video and upload it back in. So the process itself is a lot easier to use. We've also found the user interface is very simple for someone to pick up and quickly start using. And then the other thing to mention is we found that, as Julian mentioned earlier, it will actually work with things like sketches. So we have the ability to process a sketch like this, where you can take a sketch and actually match it up to your mugshots and to be able to find according matches. So here's an example of that. So you can see here the similarities between the sketch and the actual mugshot photo itself.
Very nice. Now, that facial recognition technology, maybe you can tell us a little bit about who Veritone is, but obviously there's some type of technology behind that. I'm just curious what facial recognition technology you guys are using behind that.
Sure. So Veritone has its own facial recognition engine that's being used. But what's great about Veritone is Veritone has aiWare, which is an operating system for artificial intelligence. What does that really mean? Well, that means that we have at our disposal over 300 different cognitive engines that span multiple categories of cognition, not just facial recognition, but things like transcription, translation, optical character recognition, object recognition, etc. And so if there's another facial recognition engine out there that works better than the one we currently use and identify, we have the ability to switch that out under the hood, so to speak. And now it's really invisible to the user because they're just using the application. But under the hood, we have the ability to continually improve that engine or even swap it out if needed. And so that's another key differentiator about Veritone, is we are a full service AI company, not just a facial recognition technology.
Very nice. Now, if any listeners out there have questions for either Ben Ha, Adam Tanner, or Deputy Chief Harvey, feel free to go into the questions box and pop any questions in there, and we'll get to that in just a bit. Ben, do you have anything else you want to show us?
Yes, there's one other feature I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. And so far we've talked about the happy path scenario, so to speak, where we have our evidence, where we find some good potential matches, and we continue our investigation process. But what about the situation where you get no matches back? Maybe it's a first-time offender, so their photo's not inside of their arrest record data,
right?
Or maybe they're visiting from out of town, they're coming to Disneyland, they're from across the country. And so what do you do in those situations? Well, what we have built into Identify is a separate section called Unknown Faces. So even when you have no matched faces, you can actually go into the Unknown Faces section, and we can actually add this unknown face to a separate people of interest database. And so I can say this is Jane Doe, shoplifter. And so we can provide a simple label or description to basically trigger where that face was found. And now inside a separate people of interest database, that person's face will be added. So going forward, if there's any new evidence that comes up for this case or even a separate case, we can run it against not just our known offender database, but also this people of interest database. So
Very
it
nice.
gives us a greater chance of connecting the dots and maybe making a match.
For sure. I can see that totally happening. Yeah. This is great. Well, good stuff, Ben. Thank you very much for showing us this. We're going to go back here and maybe look at to see what kind of questions people have here. We're going to go to the questions here. There's one here. Have there been any challenges in the court on this technology, and as an investigative tool / aid? If so, who has testified as an expert witness?
Yeah, to my knowledge, there have been no challenges to this, and again, it's not to say that there won't be, but currently, like I said, it relies mostly on the work of the investigative staff to put the elements of the crime against the suspect. This again is simply a moving the ball down the field. If I could elaborate, we are, however, encouraging all of our staff to be completely transparent about the use of this technology, that we're not hiding the ball, we're not keeping the secret from defense attorneys. It's written in the police report, and there should be, my advice would be to be completely straightforward about its use and how it was used and when and what it produced.
Great. Another question here, Deputy Chief Harvey. Yeah, we know you've used Identify, but do you guys have an estimate of how many maybe man hours or productivity you've been able to save on either per day or week basis or anything like that? We know it saves time and energy and so forth, but just any calculations, any possible?
It would be literally immeasurable. Well, number one, the cases that we were talking about, when you're talking about a BOLO or a be on the lookout flyer, unless you got an immediate response from another agency, someone that said, you know what, I know this suspect, it's Joe Smith, you're going to close that case and it's going to go unsolved. And so it's hard to put a number there. That goes directly to public safety, and the more times you can bring closure to these cases for the victim, for the business, the better. And you're holding someone to account for these crimes. But to try to answer your question, if you can imagine sifting through hundreds of thousands of images, that would take you months, if not years, if ever your eye was even able to discern whether or not there's a match at all, versus seconds. It's literally a game changer. So it's almost impossible to answer your question, Daniel. It just, without this tool, we would have been reduced to using other means,
Right.
or closing the case simply unsolved.
Right. Maybe one last final question here. What is, for a group or a law enforcement is looking to start out in using these, whether AI technology or new technology, what would be your best advice for those organizations? Because obviously you've been in the forefront of using these new technologies, whether it be AI or drone technology or cell phone, snooping technology. I mean, what's your advice? What kind of advice you can give?
First of all, I encourage agencies to go down this path to where you're using available technology, and again, you're simply querying a database that you already have. You're simply using a tool to scour the data that already exists inside the walls of your department. And so, as far as there being any reticence to use this technology, there really shouldn't be. It's simply a matter of opening this portal, opening your files to a reputable company like this. I recommend that you bring your legal teams in and analyze the contract and the agreement, the non-disclosure components. That this is often protected information. Certainly here in California, we have laws, the CJIS laws. California Law Enforcement Technology System is very restrictive in how and with whom you can share some of this information. Sure. So I would strongly encourage you check your local laws, or the laws in your country or your jurisdiction, so you don't run afoul of those. One other thing, if I could bring this forward, is the engine is, like I said earlier about the prolific nature of some of the criminals. They've been arrested multiple times over their criminal career, sometimes 15, 20 times. And what you'll often find in the hits is the tool will identify the same person over a period of 15 years, and it'll give you all 15 mugshots going back literally over a decade.
Wow.
So it picks up, again, these are things about your face that aren't going to change, and the computer sees that. And so imagine a human being looking at a 20-year-old mugshot of someone with facial hair, maybe now they're bald and there's no facial hair. That would be very difficult, but the tool can do it in seconds.
Right. Very good. Well, thank you very much for all your insights, Deputy Chief Harvey. Thank you for coming out over here. Ben, there's another question that popped up. Okay, great. We got more questions. We'll answer questions. That's what we want. So let's go to the next question here is, how did you get to change the interim culture on using this type of new technology?
That's a good question. And like I said, the culture of our organization is one of innovation anyway, so there really wasn't a need to change our culture internally. That culture already existed, that we are usually the agency in the region that steps out and takes, again, I use the word risk, but you're willing to try different things. You're willing to invest some resources and try things to really change the game. And so there was no need to change our culture. Now, I can't say that's the case for every agency, but if you can simply explain what it is the tool does and more importantly, what it doesn't do, that I think is going to be the best way forward. Start out small. This is how we're going to apply it. And I'm not saying that in the future we won't expand our use of AI. I think there's tremendous capability as long as it's done in a manner that is cognizant of privacy issues, that there is a tremendous public safety capability with this technology.
I would also add that, in terms of culture, that has to start from the leadership, right? It just starts from the chief. Obviously, you're deputy chief, so you're up there as part of the leadership team. But I would think it has to start from the top, and then being able to convince the chief, and then everything goes downhill.
True.
Right?
This is one of the few examples where this actually came, kind of a top down. But most of our better ideas come from the bottom up.
Mm-hmm.
You have the line users, the officers in the field, the detectives they're looking at that stack of cases in their inbox, and they're looking for ways to help their workflow. How can I solve more cases? And they start looking out there, and they start talking to their colleagues in other agencies and saying, what are you using? And that's usually how the best ideas bubble up. It's from the bottom up.
Right.
And you need to create that comfort level among your line level people that are actually doing the work, that we encourage. Bring those ideas forward, and we'll vet them. And if there's an application and its cost benefit analysis says it's a good way to go, we're going to go that way.
But also, I also see it also sharing best practices. I think in Orange County there is an organization where multiple agencies meet up as a kind of not association, but it's a group, this council that you kind of sit on. And I think you guys share best practices amongst each other's, this different agencies, no?
We do. We could do to a much greater degree.
Mm-hmm.
In all transparency, there's other areas that share more readily. and I'm not sure all the people who are tuned in, you probably have relationships hopefully with your neighboring agencies, and that's another good way to start. Is start with one agency and then prove the concept, and then it'll expand.
Land and expand, yeah.
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
Another question here is, how have other countries been receptive to this technology? Do you know of any other countries that have been receptive to this technology?
I know that around the world, there are a lot of places that are struggling with this technology, simply in the world of the Big Brother conversation. I know the UK is having that conversation, but again, it's very important to differentiate how we are using it, as I described, with a known offender database and an actual image from a crime scene to that. And everyone needs to understand that it can't be looked at as one giant AI facial recognition bucket. It's just not, it's not fair, and it's not accurate.
Right. I mean, let's say, for instance, the Boston bombing incident, right? That was imagine all the footage these guys went through right before I remember seeing all the CCTV cameras, the guy with the backpack walking around the corner. I don't know how many hours they had, but I take it if they had used Identified, that might have helped them narrow down.
That case was actually solved by using AI. That was how that case was solved.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's a great example. And it was actually solved by AI.
Right.
They have all that footage that you just described, and they needed a tool to crunch it and categorize it. And again, mostly to eliminate people. No.
Yeah, I'm looking for a guy with a backpack only, right? So find me a face with a backpack, an object, right, and so forth.
Right. And when I say it solved it, it didn't solve it. But it gave the investigators a really, really good lead that they went down, and it turned out to be accurate.
Yeah, I was amazed how fast they were able to turn around and find people. Like, oh my gosh, I mean, out of everybody in Boston, you're thinking,
right,
who could this be, right? So, well, great. If there's no other questions, it looks like, Deputy Chief Harvey, thank you very much for your time and your insights. I hope this was very beneficial for all you folks in Canada. Ben, thank you for taking the time and joining us. Adam Tanner, thank you very much. And on behalf of myself, Daniel Wong, I want to thank you guys all for joining. I'm going to hand the mic back to Renee from Blue Line Publishing.
Wonderful. Wow. Thank you guys so much. We learned a lot more than I was planning on AI, and delve into some very interesting components. I love the quote that you just ended on, Deputy Chief, about, there's not one big giant bucket for all of AI. So thank you to all of you, Daniel, Adam, Deputy Chief, Julian, and Ben, for all that information and your insight. We will be sending out a survey via email to all attendees after this for some feedback. So please fill it out so we can serve you better. And if you learned anything that excites you or interests you, please pass it on. Tell your colleagues, tell your friends. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. Keep reading Blue Line. Check our website, blueline.ca, for more news, trends, products, and in-depth features. Bye for now.
Bye for now.